you. Thanks for tapping into another episode of Untapped Keg podcast where we talk about sobriety, mental health, so that you can take something and implement it into your own life. Here we believe that there's only one right way to sobriety. That's the way that works for you. I'm RJ Zimmerman, and I am excited to be here today with my friend and a life and alcohol-free coach, Courtney Peters. How are you doing today, Courtney?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, RJ. This is really exciting. It's my first podcast, and I saved it for you because of our friendship, and then also because today's marks 20 months alcohol-free for me, and I said, what a great way of celebrating that. And I'd just like to pause and congratulate you on 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's
And
huge.
congratulations on 20 months.
Yeah.
I couldn't have gotten to 10 years if I didn't have 20 months. So 20 months is also
Totally.
huge.
Yeah, it feels huge. Yeah.
It is. That's
Mhm.
awesome. I love to hear that. And I'm excited to dive in and learn some more about you. And as we start to talk about the topics, I know today's going to be a really great conversation, but I just want to let people know real quick, if you're looking for some guidance in just trying to find who you are after you give up alcohol, go to untappedkeg.com and see if coaching is right for you, or search the links below and talk to Courtney and see if Courtney's coaching would benefit you as well. So, Courtney, to start this podcast off, could you give us a little background on yourself and what brought you to where we are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. 20 months is a big feeling, great milestone. I was a life coach first, actually, before I went on my alcohol-free journey. And I'm a mom of two. My oldest is a 19-year-old, and he is a carpenter. So he went to the trades, which is, God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, he is really cool to see him take that path. And he moved to his first apartment last fall. He's independent. He's paying for himself. It's just really amazing. I'm also glad he's only 20 minutes from home, so he still comes home. But that was really neat to see him find something he loves as a carpenter. And my daughter, my second and youngest, is 15 years old, and she is a sophomore in high school, and she's very academically interested. She loves learning, and she hopes to be a marine biologist someday. So the joke is that he's going to build her boat. So they're really, yeah, they're really fun. And then let's see, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and what brought me out east, we live in the Boston area. I don't know if I mentioned that. But I went to Skidmore College to become a teacher. And then after Skidmore, I went to BC to get my master's in special ed, where I met my husband, who is a Bostonian. And our next month, we celebrate 22 years of marriage, which is another pretty big,
that is a big deal. That is a massive deal.
Yeah, we're partners, and we've really gotten through a lot together, and started dating in 2000. So it's easy to remember how many years we've been together, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So, but what's like kind of a fun fact is when I was growing up in Chicago, but when I was born, my parents had 4 teenagers. They thought they were done. My son, 19, my brother was 19 when I was born. They were going off to college and independence, and surprise, here's Courtney. So I was a youngest child of 5, an oldest for my nieces and nephews. My nephew, I was 9 when he was born, and then also an only, because kind of like at 5, everyone moved out, right? So I had a really close relationship with my parents, and that's just kind of fun, because now looking at it and getting to know the, friend, like it's very unusual to have all these people, and my nieces and nephews are becoming parents themselves. And so as I went through my own alcohol-free journey, I'll get to that point. But it's just to have this dynamic relationship with all these people in my life, and to show them that there's another way. Like, I was a drinker and now I'm not. And I love it, and the freedom and all the good things. But to me, as my son said, like around after my 1-year mark, he's like, Mom, this is bigger than you. I'm like, it is. I'm coaching people now. I'm guiding, I'm talking, and just showing that like there's another side to this lifestyle that I used to kind of fear a little bit. Like, what's life going to be without it? Like, that was that I've worked through. But to be on this side of it, to have it this, so out of my, like, it's just awesome. So I loved having the opportunity to come on here and talk to you, and just talk to people, and just say, hey, listen, there's this new narrative. There's this new mission out there that is looking at alcohol differently. So around age 40, so I'm 49 this fall. So in 2015, I started this program called the Whole Life Challenge. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's based from California, but it's a virtual game that works on the seven healthy habits, and you get together with a team. It's got a little board on an app, and you track yourself every day if you've done the healthy habits. And when you pick your nutrition list that you're going to follow, there's a little alcohol part. It's like the lowest level is 1 drink a day, the middle level is 1 drink a week, and then the hardest level is 0 drinks. And I looked at that list, RJ, I'm like, hell no. Like, why would I ever not drink for 8 weeks? I don't even understand that. Like, I'm not pregnant. I don't have a problem. That seems like a really long time. I grew up Catholic. I'm like, it's not Lent. Like, I don't even understand. Like, it just wasn't. So that's what really changed things for me when it was under the wellness lens. And I was like, okay, now this is kind of like bothering me. Like, why wouldn't I do that list? And so I would play these rounds. So there's like 8 weeks back then. Now it's 6 weeks. So you go off and on from this challenge, and it would always be in my mind. I'm like, okay, what list am I going to do? And then if I lost that point, I'd have like 4 because I already wasn't compliant. So looking back and during our trainings for the coaching to learn about cognitive dissonance, that started way back then. I didn't even know it was a thing. So last year, when I heard that term, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, it freed me of that shame or that worry of like, why can't I, with the angel and the devil voices, and they got pretty loud because I played these rounds of this challenge. And again, this list would come and I'm like, huh. And then I started leading groups, and they were going to have a coach training program within the Whole Life Challenge for people like me that were captains. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, I was an athlete. I've had coaches in my life. This could be like my thing. Because I had stopped teaching when I had my kids, and I had gone back to some preschool work and working and I'm like, okay, what's my next thing, right? So the coaching, and then that program didn't come to fruition, but the coaching seed was planted. I'm like, okay, cool. So then from that, I became a health coach, and I went through training. And again, the spotlight was shown on alcohol because we would do these practice sessions. And I remember this guy, he was the coach and I was the client. And he said, okay, so what do you do to relax? And I'm like, oh, I'm an athlete. I like sports. I go outside. I play with my kids and love TV, and I drink wine. And I heard myself say that. And I was like, wow, it has a bigger meaning than I think, I named it out loud. And that really kind of felt good, I guess, in a way, looking back, like, okay, I'm talking about it, but I don't like that. Like, one of my rules was I don't need this. Like, and now I had named that I did. And so when we're coaching people, as you know, when we're going through these coach certification programs, you really work on yourself. And I really feel like the good coaches have coaches. Like, we always are doing some work and looking at things differently and going through different processes of just getting aligned. And I'm feeling really aligned now, like now that I'm alcohol free. But back then, it was such a disruption. And it was such, I would work, fast forward a little bit, like I was a life coach, and I'd work with people on their own dreams and transformations and putting themselves on their own lists. And yet I'm planning my alcohol and what nights I'm going to drink and what nights I'm not. Oh my God. And then I planned the product, like low alcohol, low carb, gluten free. I mean, the time and space this took really caused that cognitive dissonance. And then also really into the last year or so, the anxiety was really, really hard. And I didn't know that word was a thing until last year. So like doing the coach training that I did really helped me get some clarity around my own relationship and what was happening mentally and internally. So for me, none of my relationships were like harmed. Everything was great except for my own with myself. That's when the shadow of alcohol was larger than the actual like enjoyment of it. Let's say that. So that's kind of where all the cognitive dissonance, what the angel, the devil, how much the planning was just really wearing on me, and yet still fitting it in. And I kind of frame it like as a game of Jenga of like, that's how I felt when I think back to my relationship with alcohol. And I loved the coaching part, and I just love coaching. So though when I started my coach training, my oldest sister was diagnosed with cancer in 2018. And she was given 3 to 6 months to live. And she was the healthiest person we knew. She didn't drink, she didn't do drugs. She did yoga, but before it was a thing, she lived in Arizona, like a beautiful wellness, like she was really amazing. And the therapist. And so we talked shop when I was getting my certification for coaching, not the same modality, but there's some overlap, and we just had fun with that. But then she was diagnosed stage 4 with 3 to 6 months to live, and she was with us till 2021. And so she lived much longer than they had her prognosis. But it really was one of those, wow, like that's not fair. Like what the heck? Like why? And all people I know, she would be the last person that would have been who I would thought would get cancer. And so she gave me a nudge. And that the next day I started Annie Grace's 30-day experiment. I just needed something else. I needed to have a pull that was outside of it. Was just perfect. So I listened to her nudge, and I started Annie Grace's 30-day book. I coached myself. But it was great. I did it in the middle of Cape Cod, which is like a drinking summertime scene. And I'm like, if I
Yeah.
could do it here, I can do it anywhere. And it was July and the whole thing. And so then I think, what really helped me was the lengthening. So I finished the 30 days, and then I joined SoberSys, is another community, and I met some really nice people there. We became friends, and I also saw 2 alcohol-free coaches within that community. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. So that kind of planted that seed, but I was still working on myself to get myself to release alcohol's grip. And so those were the 2, like kind of back to back. And I had some athletic training events that I was doing. So I had some, physical things I was doing to get to these points. So that was really helpful to train alcohol free. I felt great. I'm like, okay, wait, I'm not going to bring this back in. And then I listened to the Andrew Huberman 2-hour podcast. And that's when I decided on the 6-month milestone. And I think it was just a few days after that I committed to a year. I'm like, wait, if I'm doing 6 months, like, why even bring this stuff back? I'm feeling awesome, and I want to keep going. And so then I started working with Rob Gilbert, and I just was ready to build my business a little bit further and to reach other people because I had all this clarity. Like it just was amazing that removing the alcohol felt so good in my body, and it felt aligned. And I really wanted to just build my coaching business more. And simultaneously, I was getting Andy Ramage's emails, and he used to be part of One Year No Beer, but now he's part of the Dry Community, DRYY, and he's very big over in the UK. And he is based on positive psychology, and it was perfect for me because my business name is PMA, Positive Mental Attitude. My life motto is positive mental attitude. I'm like, this guy is speaking my language, and he's alcohol free, and he's a coach. And eventually he emailed that he was opening his coach training to help to train already certified coaches to get an alcohol free coach experience and get certified. I'm like, oh my God, this is meant to be. So then my whole journey pivoted to coaching others. It was like that pull, that purpose. I wanted people to feel like I felt, like I was a drinker and then I wasn't, and I was feeling great. So I trained with him in March of 2023. And then a little bit later, I was also on Annie Grace's email distribution, and she was opening a new class for her, this Naked Mind Institute, in June. So I signed up for that. So I just kept doing stuff. And we met there, and I graduated or finished my certification in November. And so now we're in March, and here we are. So it's just like going through my own change, showing up for my clients, my family, myself, the way I was, and now serving others to feel this way, to release the grip of alcohol, and really just to make it irrelevant. Is such an amazing experience. And the thing that I love about blending the life coaching, the alcohol-free coaching, is if I have a life client working on things, they might tag on the exploration of alcohol-free, or if I have an alcohol-free client, there's some life stuff that might be needing some support. So it's a really nice blend, but I could also have life coach clients that still drink. I have friends, my husband does, like I get that. But for me, I feel amazing. And I think for especially women in their 40s, their hormones and everything else going on, it just is so much better to not have it. And that's a big answer for my background, but it's so many different chapters, and it's just
Yeah.
so cool. It's so cool showing up for like all my people, like my nieces and nephews, and just showing them that this is very happy. It's a very happy life. And I think that we're going to see that. I really believe that, like for your kiddos, I really feel like things are changing. And I really believe like the next decade, it's going to be much smaller. It's just a bigger industry that we're up against, I feel. But even those companies are starting to provide the non-alcohol beverages and the zero proofs and stuff. So I just think it's getting smaller, like all around. And the science is coming out so strong that the harm with it, that I look forward to having more science coming out to say this is
Mm.
why it's not good for us.
Yeah. And the thing
So,
that you've just touched on that I really want to get to is like the happiness, right? That you have, that you
mm,
feel, that you have going on. So this past week, I went down and I visited some friends down in Florida, and they were so excited, to be around me and everything. I was the only one who wasn't drinking,
mm,
but I introduced a friend to Heineken Zero. Who'd never had it before. Wasn't a big beer fan just because of how heavy beer can be and how it sits in your stomach. And the thing about non-alcoholic beer is it's it's very light. Like it's almost like it's very watery. There's not that heavy yeast consistency sitting in your stomach. Because this is amazing. I love this. And so started drinking the NA beer that weekend, and he still would have, one drink, but then he'd have, five or six NA beer just because he wanted something with flavor. That was kind of the only thing we had other than water. And he's just like, this is just extending out, the alcohol that he's having. And it's like the how it unlocks that and you get to still be present and be yourself. Like I what you're saying. And then also I wasn't tempted at all being around these people that are drinking. And you
yes.
brought up the irrelevance of alcohol. And it's like I I kind of asked myself, I'm like, do I miss this? And I
Mm-hmm.
sat there and it's like, no. I know that my life, things are going so great right now. Would alcohol
Mm,
benefit my life in any way? No. So having those questions and things like that, like providing the example that you are to your kids, to your nieces and nephews, and just how different life can be. It doesn't have to be what we were told it was. It is special, and it is changing. And so when you think about like that happiness that you found and the different way that you're leading life, did you really think it was possible to kind of like be at this place that you are right now?
no. Like I just didn't know. And I think that's what's going to change too, because I think you and I think all these other trailblazers that talked about it, that say that this is another side, like this is another, it's a choice, it's a lifestyle that's a choice. And I think that because I tried so hard to fit it in a healthy way, that bothered me, like the whole thing, and I feel so aligned now, and I don't miss it at all. I feel like truly for me, I uncovered, like there wasn't a rock uncovered in terms of alcohol. I call them chapters, like I'm a college chapter at this chapter, different chapters. But
Yeah.
I feel so. To your point though, too, is I have this little Yeti like cooler that I would just bring everywhere I went. Like I'd have my little NA products in there and I would just be prepared. So whatever happened, I had my own thing, and that really helped. So when I made that decision to go a year, all the questions were kind of off the table. Like my friends, I was not new to challenges, as I shared.
Hmm.
So, oh, Courtney's just doing her year thing. So it made it easier. And then to have the products. And I actually hosted a mocktail night at our local museum. And that was really fun because we had a bartender like shaking stuff up, and there's no alcohol in the whole place. And people just got to taste what this stuff tasted like the adaptogen drinks, or like the NA beers. I had a NA Guinness on my first, I'm in Boston. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, but they had the NA Guinness and it tasted just the same. And I made my husband, I'm like, are you sure this is not alcohol? The guy's like, yeah, here's the can. Because sometimes it just tastes so real.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's no missing it. I think what for me was too, was like, when I got the terms cognitive dissonance, decision fatigue, and anxiety, it really released that guilt thing, or like
Yes.
wait, why did I drink more than I wanted to? Like, what's going on with that? It wasn't me, it was the substance and the mental tsunami that was happening when I drank more. And once I released that, I'm like, okay, like it was so much. And that's what I want for our clients. And that freedom that comes with it is like, okay, wait, the shame game's over. Like I say that all the time here to my clients. Like that kind of ship sailed. Like this is not about that anymore, I feel. And so I love that we have all this products. Now, apparently over in Europe, they have like 0 bars and everything. Like I think we're starting to get them here more, but
Yep.
there's even like places you can go without alcohol and seeing mocktails on menus. And um, I remember the first Mother's Day that we went, my first Mother's Day being on my journey, and I felt so confident because I'd already done all this work. And I said to the waitress, I said, what kind of mocktails do you have? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, well, I'm alcohol free and I like to have like a really good mocktail. My kids were like, yeah, mom's alcohol free. It was just like, it was such a different delivery, And it's almost
Yeah.
like when people started hearing gluten free for the first time, I feel like that's the tone of voice I use. It's not like oh, I don't drink any. I'm like, what do you got? Like, let's have fun with this. And I think that changes the narrative too, of just, and bartenders love making drinks. They're like, oh, this is interesting. And so having those products, I think, are really helpful because
Yes.
I just think they are. Um,
And that's the
yeah,
thing. Just because you don't drink alcohol doesn't mean that you can't have things with flavor. And that's,
yeah.
back in my day when I stopped drinking, like all we had was O'Doul's,
Oh
right?
my God, thank God for you. I don't know how you got duels, totally. Now there's so much. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually that's fair. Like I picked a really good time for this. Like there's big people in the movement, there's awesome mocktails, alternatives. Like, yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah.
And th-
Quit lit,
that's
like so
my
many books.
right.
Yeah, like yeah.
And there wasn't these like right
Yeah,
when I stopped
sorry.
like and it's
Yeah.
okay because I wasn't gonna read them anyway. Or I
Right.
mean, I would have drank the beer that I'm drinking now. Like, and that's the thing that I tell people too is I still drink beer. It just doesn't have any alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, then it's an NA beer, and it's still a beer.
Right.
It's the flavor, like
Yeah, it's holding the
what I
glass.
wanted. Boom, it's there.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize like how much I had missed these more complex flavors because it was
Mm,
water, tea, or soda for so long.
mm,
Now you can get these amazing drinks that are just it's a complex flavor that you get to have with your meal. And it's like, oh, I didn't understand just how much I was kind of missing this,
mm.
and I am
Mm-hmm.
now. But like you said, like when you start to have fun with it, and that you do this like in your mind, like it's that shift that happens. We can call it a mindset shift. We can call it whatever we want, but that shift, that moving from this is something that I have to do to this is something that that I get to do, that I want to do, that I
Mm-hmm.
choose, and you take that power back, and that just makes you so when you say it, you have that confidence, like, yeah, I'm alcohol free. What do you got for mocktails? Let's make
Yeah.
something creative, right?
Yeah,
And just
right.
that change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And especially I know a lot of my friends and clients have said that they love their glass of wine when they cook. Like it's that habit swap. And I just
Yep.
said, well, why don't you try 0% wine? They're like, get out. I'm like, oh, it's a thing. It's definitely a
Hmm.
thing. And so just swapping that in because it's the fun glass. I've got great glassware because we've been doing this for a long time. So it's what you're pouring into it, right? And so I remember my very good friend, she's like, oh, that's such a good idea. I think it's just so new that you can just throw something else in your glass and still have that nice feeling. And just not alcohol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned in the background too, like you were worried about the fear of what would this look like without alcohol? What would this life be? Would I'm guessing that was around could I have fun? Could I do things that were interesting? Like, is it just going to be kind of that one note? No, I go and do this thing and kind of just have water, I guess, because I don't know what else I can do. Was that kind of the fear that you were talking about that was there?
Yeah, I think it was the also just knowing that the other programs out there that look at alcohol that didn't fit me. And it fits
Mm,
loved ones. So I think that that's great for them. But I'm like, okay, but what if I want to change mine? What does that look like for me? Like, I don't understand, like it, because I didn't know about what we do. Like, I didn't know this was a world.
yes.
And so I think I love that you have a podcast. I love that you talk about it. I think it's wonderful that one positive of social media is that people are out there sharing this narrative and this lifestyle, because I'm glad, what that phrase is like, you know what you know, wait, you don't know what you don't know. And I
Hmm.
didn't know this lifestyle in this way. And that's why I'm so passionate about coaching and talking about it, because the more people hear, the more of a choice it is of a, wow, I want to give that a try. And so I also, the fear was I didn't understand why I was having this like angel devil reaction, because I was so good at my mind. Like I was a teacher, I was so good at goal setting. I was so good at people. I'm the one in the airport that hears everyone's life story. I love people. I love talking, and hearing and connecting. And then when it came to this relationship with alcohol, like what is going on? Like, and then I just started kind of looking into it. So I was kind of fearful of that relationship and like, what did it mean? And I gave that fear too much power, because there's nothing. But I thought there was something, but there was nothing. And so once I did the work, I'm like, okay, it just was like this thing called cognitive dissonance and anxiety, and those didn't align with who I was, and here we are. But that was it. I also have a very big drinking environment here in terms of friends, but I had done like those challenges, and I have always taken at that point 2 weeks off. So like I knew what that felt like, but I think forever. And like I say to my clients, I'm like, we're not in this for like, we're just doing it one step at a time.
Hmm.
Like now it's forever for me, but I didn't know that on July 8th of 2022. I didn't know it was going to be forever. And I think that that's a good way of approaching this change, is that we don't need to think about it in forever right now. It's just, let's try to feel good about our path. And then that alleviates the fear. I have a client who is like, feels like it might be boring. And like, how does that life feel like? And so we just kind of swap in kind of thrill seeking things. Actually, I am having her go to like we figured we could go to one of those axe throwing places. I'm
Yeah,
like, let's get thrill other ways, kind of, or like there's these
absolutely.
glass breaking places. So I think that's where the coaching really comes in, is like to look at the swaps and like, what do we think alcohol does? And then how can we bring something else in it to help fill that void that you're feeling? I mean, that's
Yeah,
real.
absolutely.
Um, but for me, it's the social thing. But I was out, but now because I think of you guys like that didn't have the cool menus. And so now I'm out with friends. I'm like, oh, do you have a cool menu? And they do, but I'm sorry that they didn't back then. But so thank you for
Yeah.
trailblazing. But I don't think it's going to be that foreign of a feeling anymore, which is great.
Yeah, and what you've come back to and you've hit on these points is having that understanding of that's what this is, and it gives you that understanding of yourself. So now it's, instead of having that shame, like what is this, like I'm good at setting goals, I'm good at doing this, but this one thing just has a little bit of power over me.
Mm-hmm.
And now as you get that understanding of yourself, it's like, oh, I'm not condoning that, but now I understand what it was. So now I can
Totally.
move past it because it's not giving me this, that confusion anymore. That what is this? And that focus is, it's going to something else. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what's really powerful for me too, is that understanding that can come with being honest with yourself, and then having these different terms, cognitive dissonance, anxiety, um, and all these other understandings that we have of life, but we don't put them to alcohol. We don't put them to, let's say, workaholism, let's say
Mm-hmm.
gambling, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
so many other things in life that are honestly the same. It's just we don't put those words to it. So now that we have these understandings and these words, we're putting them to it. Oh, it's giving us that bridge that we didn't know was needed to understand ourselves and then give ourselves compassion.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And it's like I joke with my coaches too. Like I have another coach, Pippa, who's wonderful. She's my magic coach, and she is spiritual, energetic, and we always, when we first met, you didn't have the question like, oh, I stopped doing cocaine. I never did cocaine, but let's just say this is an example. Oh, why? So like if you stop drinking, oh, why? What happened? Like, or I stopped gambling. Oh, why? Like it's the only thing that I can think of that people question your decision. And I
Yeah.
think that's really hard, is that, you know, you're trying to make a good choice for yourself. And there's these external questions that come. And I just love this about the new narrative that all these folks are doing, including us being coaches. We help with that piece of like when these questions are asked, because there's nothing, I don't know if there's anything else in the world that if you make this a decision, you get that kind of conflict, like those, you know, like,
It's very rare, right?
you
Very
know,
rare.
right. So it's like,
And
that's hard. It's hard.
there's been multiple times where people have told me, "Oh, I can't trust somebody I can't have a beer with."
Oh yeah.
And it's like,
Hmm.
what does that matter? Uh, I think
Yeah.
you have your priorities mixed up. I don't think you understand what beer is. You
Yeah.
know, and it's just
Right.
that you don't hear that about anything else. And um, you know, if you do, like, that's the wrong crowd to be around, which, yeah, it turns out maybe that was not somebody that I should want to be around. But hearing that, it's got that demoralizing feeling of, you know, what do you mean you can't trust me just because I am not going to
Yeah.
have a beer with you?
Right.
What?
Yeah. And that's so true. And that's so real. And I know you help folks that to find themselves after they remove alcohol. And I think that that's a really special coaching um, support because mechanism, because it is this like, wow, when I hear that statement, like what, how does that make me feel? How does that land? You're trying to figure out your own journey and navigating life without alcohol. If you're like me, that has had it in their life for a long time. And for me, the switch was pretty quick because I did a lot of coaching on myself prior, but I was also ready for this. And, um, but it's the stuff after, right? It's what you're saying. It's so prevalent in our society. And so I just think it's so valuable to do what you do to help people
Hmm.
navigate life after, for those exact kind of question.
And it's one of those things where when we're honest with ourselves, right? And you mentioned before about you are drinking to relax, you're drinking to you know, you're not fun unless you drink, those kind of things. Now think about, okay, when I was drinking, was I actually those things, or was
Right.
I just telling myself that I was those things, and so I thought that I was? And the answer is probably going to surprise people if they sit back and they're honest with themselves.
Hmm.
Was I actually more fun drinking, or did I just turn the part of my brain off that cared?
Mm. Yeah, like the numbing. Yeah, right. Mm.
And
Interesting.
I had a friend who we were doing this, and he's like, you know, don't you miss those times? Like, it was kind of fun when you were drinking a little bit, right? Do you miss that at all? And I'm like, I've actually been thinking about this.
Hmm.
I don't remember times where I actually had fun. I just remember times that I just didn't care
Mm.
anymore.
Mm.
And so, if I'm being honest, I didn't really have fun when I was drunk. I just stopped caring that whether I was fun or not. I just stopped caring whether I was accepted or not. It was this shutting my brain up kind of a thing. And the moments that I remember that were really fun were before I got drunk.
Mhm.
And so those
Mm.
moments are still there for me without alcohol.
Mhm.
And so, you know, just sitting back and reflecting and being honest with yourself, it could lead you to these answers like, oh, what I'm putting onto alcohol, it's actually not giving me.
Mhm. And I think a lot of people, I've talked to some people about this one too, is quieting the intuition. So I
Mm,
think at the end of the day, with all the coaching and all the inner work I was doing, I think that having a glass of wine was relaxing. And when I did the harder work around that, I think I thought it was just quieting because I was doing so much intuitive work. But now being alcohol free, it's so much easier to listen to my intuition and it's not so loud. I'm like, okay. And then the worry about the teenage, like my, just loving my kids and going through the chapters they're in right now. And the term surrender, it was a goal of mine, like the year before, I think after my sister passed, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to learn how to surrender, like to my kid, like their path. And that's hard to do as a parent. And that was a nice goal, but now removing the alcohol, it is so much easier to do because the worry is so much less. So I didn't know that alcohol was pouring onto this worry of mine. It was the clarity that comes from being alcohol free, the easier to get into grounding and to get into my meditations and stuff. It's like everything's just easier. And
Mhm.
it's just, so I think for me, it was like that quieting at the end of the day. And now I can just go to bed and I can quiet because there's nothing to really have to quiet about because everything is just kind of even, it's just things are just
Yes.
at ease a little bit more. And that's what I really find about this lifestyle for myself.
Mm. And the fact that you've done so much inner work to be able to get to that even space that
Hmm.
um that is honestly, like, in my opinion and the work that I've done, that's the space that people actually talk about when they're talking about they want to be happy in life. Like,
Mm.
they want that contentness, they want that peacefulness, that serenity, so they can
Oh,
get to
that's a
that
good word.
joy when it happens, right?
Yeah.
But like when people talk about happiness, like that's what I think that they mean. And
Hmm.
so it's really amazing hearing you say that and how easy it is for you to be able to find that with having that clarity and that understanding of yourself.
Yeah, I love it. And not planning all the alcohol crap. And
Oh,
like, what nights am I going to drink and what kind of product? I mean, RJ, it's tiring. Like during our beginning, it's just tiring looking back and how much time I spent on it. And, um, and I'm okay. Like I'll say to my old Courtney, okay, you got, you part of your life journey, but like, I'm thankful to be where I am right now. For
that's
sure. For
the energy that
sure.
you save, right?
Oh,
It is unreal. Like, so this past week, I've had a lot going on. And so I'm trying to juggle, being a single dad and having all these meetings and my schedule kind of being, not just kind of, but like being chaotic. And you're
mm-hmm.
talking about when you first started, like scheduling days that you drink and what you drink and all this. I'm like, holy crap, am I glad that I don't have to juggle that with all of this? Like, that's something that I didn't even take into account that people absolutely are doing and just how much energy goes into that
Oh, yeah.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you may not even realize how much energy you're putting into that until you take your awareness and you spotlight it, like you don't know what you don't know. And that's part of what coaching is allowing, the spotlight. Oh, you're looking at this right now, but what if you looked in this direction? Kind of just looking at the same thing, but from a different angle. And just how much energy would you save by not doing that? It's like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that that was taking up so much space.
Yeah. It's amazing. And when I did my coach training, we did this energy like, you know, my first one, so a long time, and I was still fitting alcohol in, right? So like that was a lot on me, and my spirit and my energy. And so I think I know that that's why Carol gave me a nudge from heaven because she saw different for me and she saw um the impact that I'll have for others. Like I really, really believe that. And that is such a motivator, you know?
Yeah. And it's powerful when you have the understanding that, like you said, the alignment that you feel and the clarity, and you can see just how you can provide guidance and how you can touch people to allow them to see things from that other perspective, that they can reach heights that they didn't even know that they could.
Yes.
And when you get into that alignment piece and just allowing yourself to be and surrendering to it, right? It's so it's something that you don't realize is out there until you start to really look at yourself and you start to see the things that are out of alignment and you start removing them. And it's like, oh, that's why when I did this thing, I just felt so bad afterwards, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily during, but afterwards, how are you feeling? Has it taken from you? Has it
Mm,
not given anything back at all?
totally.
And that's how
Totally.
you can find things that are out of alignment with you.
Oh, I love that. It's so right on. Yeah. And the
So,
peace that comes from it.
yes, absolutely. You don't even realize that it's
No
there.
idea.
Oh,
And I was a peaceful person. Like, you know, my husband is wonderful the other day, date night. And he's like, you didn't have to do this change. You wanted to. And I was like, wow. Oh, I loved hearing that from him. But um, the peace that came from this change and the higher elevated living and the alignment and all of it, I'm so grateful that I'm here. Like I could never even imagine feeling the way I completely feel inside because I didn't know what to dream about. Like I literally didn't know this was an option. So,
yeah,
that's why I talk about it because this is an option. Um, and it's an awesome one.
it really is. It really is. And just showing people that it's not just an option, but you still get to have fun. You still
Oh
get
yeah,
to find that
right.
happiness and you're not just sitting at home bored like, oh, there's nothing I
Totally.
can do. But
Yeah.
that there's so many, like I had those thoughts at first. Like there's so many people that have those, oh, if I stop drinking, I won't be able to hang out with my friends. I won't be able to go and enjoy things. I won't be able to. And it's like, why do you think that?
Hmm.
Where's that coming from? Is that real or is that just something you're telling yourself to keep you where you are?
Right. Totally.
Mm.
And I think as parents, to show this change. I mean, for me, your kids weren't here yet, but mine saw me decide to do this, and that's so powerful. And like, oh, I heard, my mom doesn't drink. Like, it's awesome. And so as even um as a parent and to share like how happy we are and like yeah and she can pick me up every anytime at night like and she's available 24/7 and um how cool and that right there if anybody's listening as a parent that's so worth it right there.
Mm. Yes. And just giving yourself that space to allow just to feel that, right?
Hmm.
Give yourself the space to understand just how special this is, why, and then to give yourself that clarity and that understanding is wow.
Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
Courtney, if people want
Yes.
to keep up with you and connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
My website is pmacoachcourtney.com. I'm only on LinkedIn for social media. I also have a YouTube channel. Um, and if you're in the Boston area, I do in-person sessions for coaching as well as virtual. So
It's amazing.
that's
It's
yeah.
amazing. If you could leave the people with one thing, what is it you would like them to know?
Mm, good question. Um, that they're worth it.
Mm,
You're worth the work. And it feels like work. It doesn't have to be that big, but it might feel like work and it's worth it and you're worth it. And alcohol is not worth it.
mm. That's powerful. That's so powerful. That's another podcast all on its own. So thank you for joining me here today, Courtney. This was so much fun and it was a great conversation to have. I'm going to be excited to have you back to have that conversation. But until then, you've been listening to the Untapped Keg podcast. Hit that subscribe button, send that to somebody who you think would benefit from this conversation. and leave us a review. It can be 5 stars, 4 stars, 1 star. Be honest. Be honest with yourself and us what you want to leave. I appreciate it. And let's try to be better tomorrow than we were today. Because at least if we don't make it, we tried. Have a great week, everybody. I love you.